Hi, I'm Oliver Harschnitz and I'm a research group leader here at Human Technopole. NeuroCOVID is essentially, I think, the long-term consequences after an acute infection that specifically affects the brain or the nervous system. This can be very difficult to, I think, understand or see from a clinical perspective, as obviously also neurological symptoms sometimes present as maybe perhaps a non-neurological disease. It can be simply fatigue or even autonomic dysfunction, which could be like orthostatic hypotension. But sometimes it's very clear, such as impairment in memory or thinking or brain fog, as people like to call it. But I think at the moment, with the way we understand it, it's still quite heterogeneous. And I think part of the challenge that we face as a consortium is also defining that better with our clinical partners and the patients that they see. I think one of the key things that we're missing in our understanding of NeuroCOVID, especially from my own perspective, is the actual drivers of inflammation or chronic inflammation in NeuroCOVID, and the drivers of the molecular drivers of the symptoms that these patients suffer from. Because I think by identifying the molecular drivers or targets, we may be able to, in the future, try and understand better NeuroCOVID, and then in the long term identify therapeutic strategies that we can help prevent NeuroCOVID or treat NeuroCOVID. So I think NeuroCOVID has a very unique goal, and I think a set of objectives, because we're such a broad and diverse group of scientists, clinicians, where there's expertise from different fields. So based from clinical neurology and immunology, all the way to genetics, genomics, stem cell biology, immunology. So I think here what we can contribute is really both understanding the disease better from a clinical perspective, helping understand also the patient perspective to actually getting a better insight from a genetic and a molecular level of the disease, and perhaps even being able to identify drugs that we can repurpose to treat NeuroCOVID. The contribution that we would like to make as a group within the NeuroCOVID project and consortium is really to understand the molecular drivers of NeuroCOVID for specific neuronal subpopulations, so specific subtypes of neuronal cells in the brain, and also perhaps understand the genetic underpinnings of why one neuron is perhaps more susceptible to SARS-CoV-2 infection or the consequences of SARS-CoV-2 infection compared to a different cell type. When the WHO announced that COVID-19 was no longer a global emergency, I think I think a bit of a double feeling to this sense. I think there was clearly an acute stage where it was very clear that there was, with the global pandemic, that it was an emergency situation. I also understand that that cannot be the case forever, and that there are then obviously there's an evolution in that sense of how the pandemic has developed. Nonetheless, I think we have to be very conscious of the fact that COVID-19 hasn't ended here, and that's, I think, specifically what we're trying to address. I think many people, a considerable portion of people, suffer from the long-term consequences of COVID, and specifically also the neurological consequences. And so for me personally, I feel that while the acute emergency may be over, we still have a lot of challenges that we need to face to improve people's health who have really been affected by NeuroCOVID. So based on COVID-19 and the pandemic that we faced, I think there are many lessons that we can take forward. For me personally, considering also the challenges we face with climate change, I think the readiness to new viral threats and emerging pathogens is a key challenge. We see that now with increasing temperatures and also the increase in incidence for example, encephalitis caused by different flaviviridae. We need to be able to respond effectively to these new pathogens or more prevalent pathogens. A good example was also last year with the emergence of mpox infections throughout the world and the spread. So we need to respond appropriately also with vaccine development. And I think this was a key lesson from the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think Italy is quite uniquely positioned to really be a leader in the field for science in general, but also neuroimmunology. And I think we see that here at Human Technopole, where a lot of leading talent has been attracted, both at all different stages of careers, from senior researchers to group leaders to postdoctoral researchers and PhD students, but also in the wider scientific community. In Milan, there's really a very strong neuroscience and immunology community, which is also very welcoming to scientists abroad, and I've experienced that myself. And also outside of Milan throughout Italy. And I really feel that this strong neuroimmunology community can come together and really try and push the field forward.